Hi everyone. Today we're talking about the benefits of bodyweight training. And as the Backstreet Boys have often said, tell me why. So why are we looking into benefits of bodyweight training? Kind of anybody who is doing any type of exercise, they were doing bodyweight training as a child, or they do that at sport practice. But if you really want to get big and fast and strong, you're supposed to do like heavy power cleans and crazy heavy squats and bench press, right? Well, that's kind of what I want to talk about today, is to really kind of challenge that mindset and talk about some of the outstanding benefits that the adaptations, not only the adaptations, but the application about why bodyweight training may be superior or a better idea, or it may just be something to intermix with some of the barbell training that many of us have sort of grown to make our first choice. So some reasons, some I will dive into on this slide, and some we'll revisit again momentarily. How about for warm-ups? When you've got a big group of athletes, or maybe just an individual athlete, and you just want to do something different and efficient and it's kind of simple and safe, putting in bodyweight exercises in your warm-ups can be a fantastic idea. It's something that gets the body going from, head to toe. It's going to be lower intensity, depending on what movements you choose. It's going to be lower intensity. So it really does act as a fine warm-up. And it's something that's going to get their nervous system firing, getting them, bracing their cores. All kinds of good things are going to come. So I think that body weight exercises within the warm-ups, even if you are a diehard powerlifter or barbell fanatic or kettlebell or whatever it is, I think we can all agree that putting in bodyweight exercises into your warm-ups makes sense. It's easy. It's logical. It very well might be the best thing for the athlete. Moving on, what if you have no gear? What if there's no equipment? Sometimes I've been in situations where I've had large crowds at events that I need to get warmed up or put them through a little workout. And it's not like we have hundreds of barbells or anything like that. So having the skill set of making people work without any toys or gimmicks or anything like that, it's a great tool to have in your tool bag. You do not want to always be depending on the kettlebell or the latest gizmo, or, okay, does everybody have a band? No. Oh, okay, now I don't know what to do. So, no gear, especially pretty easy to start taking bodyweight training more seriously from where I'm standing. When COVID-19 caused the pandemic and the shutdown, is I had a whole bunch of athletes go home, and they might have been cut off in their season. They might have been in their off season, wherever they were at, but they went home and they wanted to keep being an athlete. They wanted to keep being productive. And the gyms shut down. Some of them had kick butt home gyms. Some of them had nothing. And I had put together bodyweight programming in the past, but I pretty much always kept it pretty simple and pretty short. It was for maybe like one athlete on the team who they kind of said like, yeah, if you put something together, I'll use it this summer, but I don't have a gym and I'm going to be working 2 jobs and things like that. So just even after coaching for several years, I had just never really had a bodyweight only program that I needed to program out and build out and create for several months or weeks or whatever it was. So the pandemic really actually gave me a good challenge and kind of put me back on my heels a little bit to think about how creative am I, and what tricks do I have up my sleeve to keep people engaged, to be training productively, and to basically minimize the damage that comes with not being in a weight room. So it was a good challenge for me. And I think, if the pandemic has happened once, history repeats itself. Maybe we all need to get ready for that to happen again. So when it first happened, I was writing programming for athletes. I called them living room lifts. How were they going to work out in their basements? And then once we actually did come back to campus, I had teams, because it's hard to get in the weight room, I had teams that were trained and we weren't in the weight room at all. So I might be able to take some equipment out to them, but I wasn't taking out squat racks and barbells and plates. I was taking out maybe a kettlebell, maybe some bands, but I still had to kind of rely on some of these new skills that I had recently acquired. How about for a conditioning option? I've got wrestlers who they sort of live and die by their conditioning. And if the team is going running and my certain athlete has maybe shin splints or, I don't know, broken toe or something, but we still need to get their conditioning in, having body weight exercises in my back pocket and something that I can put them through. And actually for wrestling, it's pretty ideal because you can sort of mimic the high demand of multiple muscle groups on them and to help develop their core as opposed to just their running. So it's a great conditioning option. Sometimes athletes just want something different besides run from point A to point B or do X amount of burpees or jump ropes. Sometimes maybe 5 push-ups to 5 squats to 2 pull-ups, and you just put that on repeat. And if they're going at it for a little while, 10 minutes in, I'm betting they're dripping in sweat if they're even able to still complete their 2 pull-ups. So something simple like that. How about a fun variation? As athletes are maybe being gym rats, which I love, having something that challenges them in a different way, in a new way, it's going to have a new stimulus for them. So not only is that great for them physically, because a new stimulus causes a new adaptation, but also mentally. If this athlete has been benching on Mondays and squatting on Tuesdays and doing deadlifts and pull-ups on Fridays or whatever it is, if they've been doing that for several weeks and you bring them in and you kind of say, all right, we're not going to touch a single weight today, but we're still going to work really hard, and you give them the appropriate training program for that, they may be rolling their eyes in the beginning. By the end, if you've done your job appropriately, they might love it. It might be exactly what they needed, a break from heavy weights, but still challenging their muscles, maybe challenging their heart rate, and maybe challenging their coordination. Bodyweight training is practical for sport, with the exception of the barbell sports like CrossFit, powerlifting, weightlifting. All of these athletes that are coming into the weight rooms to use barbells, dumbbells, machines, whatever it is, bands, chains, whatever, all those athletes that are coming in to use those things, they're developing skill set in the weight room, but then they have to get their body to transfer that skill set onto the field. And somewhere along the line, you have to take all that strength that's being developed, and we have to hope that it improves their ability to manage their own bodies and that they can coordinate it into movement. With body weight exercises, you're sort of skipping that middleman a little bit, and you're kind of getting right to the meat of the issue is, can these athletes handle their own bodies, move well, and be productive? So I think it's practical for sport. And then how about parenting young children? If you look at the general population, when people start having kids, they start spending a lot more time on the ground. So getting them used to crawling around, getting them more mobile so that they're able to more easily get up and down off the ground. There's high value in that. And I speak as a father of 2 young children, is that I spend a lot of time on the ground because that's where they are, that's where they live, especially for the first year. And then once they start, once they're up and off to the races, you're up and moving a little bit, but you still want to be able to get down and get to their eye level and kind of spend time in their world. Plus they're going to be making messes nonstop. So you're going to need to be able to get low to do some cleaning. Anecdotally, I would say that I've got some awesome case studies of general population individuals who were former gymnasts or wrestlers. And I cannot be convinced that there's not some extreme benefit that has long-lasting benefits for those athletes like gymnasts and wrestlers who are doing a high amount of body weight exercise at younger ages. Again, speaking just from years of working with general population, those individuals who have backgrounds with gymnastics and wrestling, they're more coordinated, they're stronger, they are leaner, they kind of just do everything better. I would just say there's a value in there that I just can't even explain, other than to just beg you guys to trust me that individuals who practice gymnastics and wrestling later go on to be more fit individuals in middle age. Inter versus intramuscular coordination. So intermuscular coordination is when the muscle fibers within a certain muscle coordinate to fire to produce strength and or power as efficiently as possible. And then intramuscular coordination is when separate muscles of the same body work together to produce movement efficiently. And with high intensity strength training, you're going to get more intramuscular coordination, but with body weight exercises, you're going to get intramuscular coordination. And again, that's going to apply to sport just a little bit easier. So both are important, both are necessary. I will bring up, if you look at male gymnasts in particular, they tend to have incredible biceps. The rings athletes, the male rings competitors tend to have biceps that I'm extremely jealous of. So there is muscle development in an isolated sense. But again, if you have athletes or individuals who want to perform their activities of daily living a little bit better, such as a new father or maybe an older individual who wants to be able to do their gardening and maintain their yard, bodyweight exercises, keep them in your back pocket. Be thinking about making them your top priority. And we already talked about living room lifts and COVID sending athletes home, so we'll skip that last bullet. All right, let's define our bodyweight training. Let's define our bodyweight training. Exercise that involves using the body as a means of resistance to perform work against gravity. Nothing too surprising there. Calisthenics and running. Is there enough stress? Is it just cardio? So think about running. What is it developing? It depends if we're talking about sprinting or long distance, but how many of our athletes need the ability to go run 5 miles on the road? How many of our athletes are going to have that benefit their sport? Cross-country athletes, yeah, maybe some of our longer distance swimmers or cyclists. It's a great method for developing cardiovascular efficiency. But if you wanted to do something that was a little bit more sport appropriate, that was cross training, but still closer to the activity of the sport, putting together some body weight exercises may be more effective than just going out and running on the road. One risk you run with being a gym rat, which again, I say that fondly. I don't think it's a bad thing to be a gym rat. Oftentimes, let's say you take a lineman, big heavy fella, and you get him in the weight room and he's squatting and deadlifting and maybe some power cleans, which are all great movements, very applicable to growing bigger, stronger individuals. But that's in the sagittal plane. You're not getting too dynamic there. So with body weight exercises, a lot of times you want to do, you're going to just naturally fill in the gaps with variation. You're going to start getting bored with body weight squats. And so you're going to look for variations, some lunge patterns, some crossover lunges, curtsy lunges, whatever it is. Your push-ups, you tend to start pivoting and throwing in new movements and things like that. So it almost naturally is a little bit more three-dimensional, getting into the frontal and transverse planes as well. So I think we're going to pretty much cover everything in here. So I'm just going to make a couple of comments. I'm going to bring up my little annotation here. It is pretty tough to grow the posterior chain or to overload the lower body with body weight exercises. It can be done, and we'll do some demonstrations later on to kind of address that. But for developing muscle mass and strength, people tend to have very strong legs, especially our athletes who are sprinting around quite a bit. So not only is that area, that space already pretty strong naturally, again, as a father of 2 children, when my kids are born, they come out with booties on them. They've got their glutes developed already. So if I want to do body weight exercises with a fit and a healthy athlete, maybe pull-ups are going to be challenging. Maybe push-ups, we can get them. We can do some variations that are going to smoke them. But when it's time to do more than just activate muscle, when we want to train and cause overload and drive supercompensation with the bigger muscles, like the glutes, the hamstrings, the quads, sometimes bodyweight exercises, you have to get a little bit more, you got to pull out some tricks. So that can be kind of tough. And then looking at some of our movement patterns, yeah, a lot of times you're just going to be driving complexity, and we'll be bringing that up again and again today. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. So many of us are, again, the bench press is a fun movement. It's a good movement. It has benefits, but it is an overrated movement, particularly for athletes. But people are going to do it. So let's talk about it. It's been shown in multiple studies, this is just one, that bench pressing and push-ups work the same muscles. To some of you, that's funny to hear. To others, you disagree with it automatically. But I'll say this again, the bench press and the push-up train the same muscles. The push-up actually trains more because your core and your legs are going to be involved a little bit more. Now, those of you who are bench pressing with full body tightness, yes, you are activating those muscles, but you may get away with bench pressing without using them, whereas the push-up, you always have to use them or you're falling onto the ground. And then I was actually, when I was in high school, my strength coach was a branch of a study that tested this as well. And he just measured athletes doing push-ups with weight on their back. That was a correlated percentage of their 1 rep bench press max versus athletes who just stuck with bench press. And what we found, as this study found as well, is that you're going to get the same benefits out of push-ups. So if you think about having a large group of athletes and teaching them all how to do bench press and spot and taking the time to load bars and things like that, you may be better off just having them do push-ups and calculating out the weights that they would put on their back. Then you're getting more core training, you're getting more applicable training, such as we discussed, the bench press. It takes the bench press movement of having your back against a sturdy surface and then extending your arms, that doesn't take place in sport too often, whereas we are often find ourselves in sport, belly down or face down and having to do a push-up to get up. So a push-up is just a lot more practical and applicable. And actually we can train and have a very, very similar outcome. So be open-minded. If you've got a bench press once or twice or 3 times a week, maybe think about substituting one of those days with a push-up. And then another benefit of using bodyweight exercises is that you can sort of use them as a test. So if somebody comes into me after asking them a reasonable amount of questions about their health history, injuries, making sure they sign the waiver, if I want to test them out, if I've never seen them do anything before, if they haven't trained in years, perhaps, let's say their general population, if they haven't trained in years, or maybe I've worked with college football players who have gone through high school and through junior college and never touched a weight in their lives. And they come to you and they're actually pretty big and strong and they can move a lot of weight. But since they've never touched a bar before, maybe just body weight exercises would be great for that football player who's never touched weights, or for that general population individual who hasn't touched weights for a long time. That might be the way to go. And you can do some strength testing in the form of, looking for quality push-ups, looking for bodyweight squats, lunges, things like that. So if you all don't know what the FMS is, we know what the FMS is. We talked about that already. So think about the functional movement screen. I mean to cross that out. So think about the functional movement screen in that it's all body weight exercises and how they are moving. And you could do that. We can do our own FMS where we just say, okay, show me how strong you are in lunges, squats, push-ups, and then we can look at their weakness and then we can identify it. Think back to our video regarding major movements and identifying weaknesses. So we've already had videos that have kind of taught us how to identify weaknesses in big movements, whether it's the FMS or identifying weaknesses in major movements. So we know how to do this. Just because we're not using somebody else's system, we can bring somebody in and we could have them, do a couple of movements with their body weight. And this is giving us a ground level foundational, not only a fitness test or a strength test, but also just a movement grade. How about pull-ups? Pull-ups are great. I'd say there's 2 things to think about if you're going to use pull-ups for a test or a movement pattern screening. One is that they're just a hair harder to score and grade because people are going to cheat on them a little bit more because they're so much harder. There's way more people that can do 50 push-ups that can do 50 pull-ups. In fact, a lot of people that we might see, general population, heavier athletes, maybe some of our female athletes are not performing high quality push-ups or pull-ups, and so then we have to kind of grade it and moderate it, which is no problem. But with the pull-up, that is just a hair trickier how you want to grade it or moderate it. I think for me, ideally, a weight assisted pull-up where I can specifically add, 2 or 3 plates or 20 pounds or whatever it is to give them a pad to kneel on to assist them. Ideally for me, that's how I'm going to do graded pull-ups. When we start putting bands on there or doing jumping into or something like that, how accurate it is kind of fades away. I would almost start to think a little bit more about it, switching it to a chin up, which is a little bit easier, or to a bent arm hang at the 90 degree, keeping the arm at or above 90 degrees, at or below 90 degrees, whereas that would be above 90 degrees. Yeah, so pull-ups can be, you're going to get lower numbers on them. It's just a harder movement for most humans, the vast majority of humans. It's just going to be harder to get bigger numbers on it. And then also, again, I don't love some of the modifications that we make for pull-ups. Whereas the push-up, you can just have them do a push-up on another level on a raised surface, or push-ups from their knees. And the pull-up, a lot of times I'll just end up having them do that bent arm hang or a row variation of some kind. So if I had my druthers, I would just use a plate loaded assisted pull-up machine, but not always going to have that. A study, not the most complex results here, but essentially is that using bodyweight exercises in a circuit format, we can drive our metabolic rate and challenge our cardiovascular system just as well as running. And then you think about it, you're also going to get localized muscle fatigue and stress and strain on other muscles besides just your legs. So it can be a great cross-training method for maybe an athlete whose legs are overtrained or spent, or for someone who doesn't rely on their legs so much. So my wrestlers live and die on their legs, but they need endurance and work capacity from head to toe. So having them run is a pretty important part of what they do, because it's so crucial in challenging their legs. But they also need their upper bodies, they need their cores, they need everything. So same thing goes for swimmers, the way that they operate, and just that head to toe sport, and also just how unique it is in what they do. It's hard to mimic the motion of swimming on land. So giving them a little bit of everything with bodyweight movements may be a great idea. Let's just take a look here for a moment at some potential programming with bodyweight exercises. Excuse me. Okay, so how to progress it, how to make it harder and drive overload and super compensation. Okay, we can add more reps or sets, we can add volume, we absolutely can, and that's going to work wonders until it doesn't. Because if you have a strength or power athlete, sometimes getting them into like triple digit push-up sets and things like that is just going to stop helping them out. Just like a big bench press for a cross-country runner may not be the most effective or efficient form of training. Eccentrics can be a good way to go, slowing things down. Lots of people can do 50 push-ups if they are shaking like a Polaroid picture, going up and down as fast as they can. But if you have people do push-ups where they're taking 5 seconds on the way down, 1 second at the bottom, and then pressing back up, now lots of those lifters are starting to do more like 4 to 10 push-ups instead. So think about slowing it down, cluster sets, doing a hard set but not to failure, and then backing off and revisiting it. So if you can do 20 push-ups, maybe you're doing 16 push-ups, and then you're resting and recovering and go back in. If you can do 10 pull-ups, maybe you're doing 7 pull-ups and you're resting and recovering and going back in, something along those lines. And then this would just be some ideas for the body weight training. Okay, normally the resources would just be something at the end, not to really mention, but I just want to walk you guys through this for just a moment. So Ido Portal is an Israeli who is bringing in all types of natural movement, not only cool flips and twists and turns and like slow breakdancing on the ground, kind of yoga, kind of breakdancing, but also just incorporating simple, playful movements, whether it's crawling or punching a tennis ball up against a wall. He's driving performance through kind of resetting the body and doing basic movements. GMB Fitness, there's a few guys there that are now, these are all, remember, these are guys who are all kind of doing bodyweight exercises, so they're going to be quite a bit of overlap. But I like where these guys are at, is that they are focused on getting everyone moving and doing basic patterns. So, and then building up the complexity of those patterns up. So I think they've got a great warehouse of videos online. If you want to get some free education, they have it for you. Let's see, MoveNet has some certifications, and again, they're similar, is that they do a great job of starting with basics and building their way up. So I actually have their first level certification. Mitch Hochschild is a strength coach who has this core mobility series, which is great, simple, easy. It can be done by the fit and the unfit. It's zero equipment. You basically just need space of like a mat on the ground, or if you're out on turf, you just need like a 4x6 kind of space. It's just simple and it's great. Something to really look into. Here's a video of a few crawl patterns that I put together. I'm not doing anything incredibly unique there, just maybe reminding you of some of the basics. And then this is I did a little write-up on how to build your own in-home monkey bars. So if anybody's interested, if they have a little bit of space and they want something that they can hang from, do pull-ups from, kind of play on, check this out, and you'll actually see it in our upcoming video segment here. So let's go do some demonstrations. So I'll stay here for a moment. I'm not necessarily going to read through these. I'll probably be referring back to them during demonstrations because I don't have it all memorized. I wrote this up, but I don't have it memorized. So I'll be checking in on my cheat sheet and then performing movements. So if at any point you just want to jump back and check out what we're doing, this is it. Okay, let's go. Okay, so again, this body weight movement stuff, it can be fun, it can be challenging, it can be beneficial. But one of the greatest benefits is that it's something that you can do in your own home. So at my house, we believe in, it's important to play. So got a room full of kids' toys. but I also kind of have inserted some of my own things that I think are important as well. So we'll get to see a little bit of that today. But again, it's really trying to use little or no equipment. First thing I want to talk about is getting down from the floor to getting up. So it's my understanding that it's one of the pillars of living a long life, not only having a long life, but a long quality life, is that your ability to get up off the floor. So hopefully nobody has any family members that have fallen and been hurt recently, and something to be related with staying on the ground. But it is an issue. And it's actually one of the telltale signs of the time that someone needs to go into a nursing home. So if we want to live our lives independently longer, we need to be able to make sure that we're getting them off the floor. So not something that a lot of young athletes or fit individuals are going to worry about. But for our general population and maybe some of our elderly, it's important. And especially with all the baby boomers that are getting into that age now. It's important. So we're going to start with we're going to do a few progressions on the floor. Going to kind of go easy, medium, complex. Not all of them are that different, but going to try and give some variation here. So once on the ground and not hurt, so hopefully able to operate, just to be able to hand walk back into a squat and squat up. That would be one option. Again, I'm going to bring that back, just a hand push up from the knees, hand walk back into a squat position and stand up. Seems simple enough to you and I. Other people are going to struggle with it. Second variation would be that once you're down, it's a tripod get up. So you can rock to that seated position or drive off this outside foot onto that elbow. We'll see that again in the Turkish get up momentarily. So we're doing our tripod get up now. Once we're in this position, it's going to be elbow on knee, bridge up to get here, or back to that squatting position. Again, these are not all for nearly disabled senior citizens. So I'm not saying that this is the way to keep people out of the nursing home. That's not what this is for. But your ability to get up and down off the ground in a variety of ways in case there is an injury, but also just to maintain mobility and movement skills. So that's our hand walk to squat and our tripod get up. And now here's our Turkish get up. So this is a good one that you can even add weight to, okay? So we can add weights, maybe that's for later, but you would hold that weight, or you can actually balance a shoe on your hand. Just kind of like a fun, tricky way to get people's attention, get them to dial in. And we're going to start by driving heel to elbow up to our hand. We're going to bridge, plant that knee, go to half kneeling position. We're going to do a split squat up, and then you would bring it back down in the reverse order. If you guys ever want to see something cool, YouTube that and look for heavy Turkish get-ups. And some people are going to blow you away with multiple 100-pound reps there. So on a good day, I'm good for about 100 pounds, but nothing too impressive. Some of those guys are doing loaded barbells, or they're doing a friend who curls up in a ball and they do that, but I'm not there yet. So that's from the floor down. Now we want to go from standing to floor. standing to floor. So I'm not a martial artist, but I really like the saying that when they're teaching individuals to fight, one of the first things they do is they teach them how to fall. So if it's jujitsu or judo, you learn how to throw each other around. Not that I know how to do that stuff, but the first thing they do is they teach you how to fall, how to land safely. And watching normal athletics, people get tripped up and bound up, and watching people take awkward landings on the ground when it could have been a little bit smoother, it's a little concerning. So we're going to do, we'll do something low and slow that we would want maybe our older population to get good at. And then we'll kind of speed things up a little bit. And again, sometimes we just want to have a little bit of fun. So we're going to go lunge to push up, squat to rock back to back rock, and then we'll do some forward and backward rolls. So hopefully I can nail those. Okay, so for our older population, to get from standing down to the floor, maybe they get tripped up, maybe they want to get down on the ground and talk to their grandbaby on the ground, but just a lunge to push, okay? Big step, hands on the ground. You can have a stiff back, you can be overweight, and that's gonna be a pretty easy, friendly way to get down. And then you can get back up, right? Using our hand walk to squat that we already covered. Another way just to mix things up would just be squat to back rock. And again, you can rock into position, then your tripod stand up. You can just play games with this. You can actually have them go, you can do a 2-minute challenge of having athletes stand up and lay down on their back and stand up again. And they're not allowed to do the same movement pattern twice. So they can use their hands, and they don't use their hands. And then they're keeping one foot out of the game and kind of hobbling around and having some fun. So if you're ever in a situation where you've got, you want to get people's attention and you want to have some fun, do a 2-minute stand up, get down competition to see who can come with the most varieties, and you'll see people getting real creative. It's pretty fun. Another thing, if you want to kind of challenge, so here's my little mat here. All right, I don't want my daughter rolling on the ground like a heathen, so we got our mat. But again, with watching athletes fall and land awkwardly, now we could do some of this rolling, and it's fun to do in practice as a little bit of a competition to see who can actually do it. Again, this is not for the elderly, but also if you watch, whether it's, I keep talking about wrestling. So if you watch wrestling, they're going to be in the most awkward positions in the world. So maybe doing that a little bit in practice will help. But also my soccer players, my field hockey players, getting tripped up and being able to quickly get back up to your feet, there's a benefit there. Trick is to kick your feet backwards. There we go. And the forward roll. You get tripped up. All right. So there's my crazy movements for me. That's like the extent of my gymnastic skills. I understand that it's actually harder to get, it's more cutthroat to get into the Ringling Brothers clown college than it is to get into Harvard. So I've been told that multiple times. Is it true? I have no idea. All right, let's do some squat variations. Go bilateral, split squat, pistol squat. Okay, bilateral. All right, so you're at home, or you're working out at home, or you're doing a warm up in the gym. Just regular squats. That's often called a prisoner squat, the hands behind the head, right there. Nothing too tricky. The split squat. Let's pick on an individual leg a little bit more. It's just a variation. Not necessarily better, worse, or same. And then the pistol squat. I'm not even going to try one because I know it's not going to go well. But if I wanted to work on it and grow my ability to do a good pistol squat, like I used to be able to do back in the day, what I would do is I would just find an object that I can hang on to, a semi-sturdy surface, and I would hang on to it, and I would work on my squat pattern. That looked terrible, so we're going to try that again over here. So pistol squat, single leg squat, upper body push, go push up, Spider-Man push up, and an extended arm push up. So let's get on camera here. For our push-ups, if we want to modify, we could go from the knees, but ideally we want to get to the point where we're from the feet. And not really ideal, we just want to get to the point that we're doing something that's an appropriate challenge. So if it's from your knees, that's fine. Maybe you're doing push-ups on a bench or on a bar in the rack. You know, you can play around with your elevation, however you want to do it. Spider-Man push-up is going to bring your core into a little bit more. It's also going to pick on one shoulder a little bit more depending on which side you go to. I like to pause, look at the knee and the elbow contact. It's a little bit harder than a regular push-up. It's different, it's dynamic. It draws people's attention a little bit. Extended arm push-up. Just be some type of single arm push-up. I can use a furniture slider on the carpet here. If you're on hardwood or tile or a flat surface, you actually use a towel. So you can do the hand forward, arm out to the side, the hand that stays down. The intensity is driven up there. The intensity is driven up there. And then you're also getting like just a unique stimulus on the other side. Maybe your lats firing a little bit more. If you go out front, if you're bringing out from the side, your pecs kind of fire a little bit more. So like a furniture slider or a towel on the hardwood, something like that. Just keeping it really simple and just things that we can do at home, kind of anywhere. For hang, you know, there's great benefits for just doing some hanging. So I wouldn't recommend really pursuing too much spinal decompression. You don't really want to feel your vertebrae pulling apart and making like subluxation or like little dislocations along your spine. But you know, when we squat heavy and do heavy deadlifts and things like that, or even if we don't, you know, we're shorter at the end of the day than we are at the beginning of the day. A lot of that has to do with fluid in our spine. Our spine, the discs in our spine are most hydrated first thing in the morning because we've been laying down all night. And then with heavy lifting and maybe high impact activities, we're actually going to be compressed a little bit more than we want to be. So some hanging can drive that recovery factor. I think you can have too much of a good thing, but I think some is good for the spine. And I also really like what's going on with the shoulder complex is we're driving an activated stretch. We're allowing those tissues to go into a place where the muscles are still working. but we're actually getting stretched through there. So not often in our modern age that we find ourselves in there. And then a lot of athletes who may never do hangs like that, they then go into sport and they want to be powerful here. So you have your Olympic weightlifters. Obviously, they want to be strong overhead, but volleyball, basketball, baseball. So to go in that position and always to be putting force out there, but never to be relaxed and stretching through there, I think there's maybe some great benefits to that. So you got hangs. Now, if you can't do pull-ups, just look to rows. Again, body weight rows, something that can drive core activation. It's going to be a little bit more applicable to sport than a lot of other exercises. Just right there, some kind of row. And then the pull-up. Pull-up. However you want to do those pull-ups, you're going to get great benefits out of it. Especially if you've got an engaged core. My core wasn't really in that hollow position. So ideally, that's not as tall as I'd like it to be. Or maybe I'm not short enough, something like that. But with where I'm at when I'm hanging on that bar, my feet touch the ground. So I kind of hiked them back behind me and it wasn't too pretty. But when I'm doing it in a higher environment, I hold my feet out in front of me and I'm bracing that core. So in a normal pull-up, you're getting a core activity out of it. And then also just training those lats in a way that they don't often get unless you're on a lat pull-down machine or you're doing some type of other overhead work, which is a shame because of all the work that we're doing anteriorly with push-ups and bench press. The shoulder is going to be healthier and the athlete is going to be more well-rounded with strong lats and ability to pull-ups. I also have done work with police SWAT teams, and it was their opinion that if you're going to do a strength exercise for a SWAT officer or maybe a police officer in general, it would be the pull-up. And the reason being is that doing search and seizures or search warrants or whatever the lingo is, they actually are often going up into attics because that's like where bad guys like to hide, or they keep their stash up there or whatever it is. I don't know. But they actually are going into attics on a semi-regular basis. And sometimes they're doing it with 40 plus pounds of gear on them. So the pull-up, good for athletes, good for healthy bodies, whether you play a sport or not. And then also just in case you're ever going to catch bad guys, you may want to do a pull-up. Okay, so on our demo sheet list, it has fun items as the last item, but I'm going to do them now, and then I'll do our hamstring exercise after this. Just that way, I don't have to change the camera angle around too much. So here's a few fun items that you could do just to kind of be goofy, but also they have practical application. So one would be just a crab position hold and just have athletes rock around through it. So it's a little goofy, but what are we doing right now? I'm mobilizing shoulders. I'm activating my glutes. I'm getting a little hamstring stretch on the backside. You can send them side to side. My triceps are starting to fire here. I'm getting some stability. And I'm just kind of looking goofy, you know. Think about having 30 people sitting around in a circle all doing this at the same time. You get a laugh. You get some rolling eyes, but you get a laugh, kind of playing around, and you can put them doing circles one way, circles the other way. And if you keep them there for a little bit, they'll be burning. Number 2, quadruped step throughs. So just putting them in a bear pose. So hands and knees, and then knees up just at 1 or 2 inches. Quadruped step through. Quadruped step through with reach, I suppose we call it. I'm mobilizing that shoulder. This down. I'm activating my glutes there. And my core and my quads are firing as I'm in that super awkward position. It's also good for just teaching sort of a dance move. You know, you never know when you're going to need to break out a little wannabe break dancing. And then my last one that's just kind of fun is the cartwheel. So now you don't want to be challenging people with things that you yourself can't do. So if you can't do it, I would say don't go in this direction. It's always a little nerve-wracking because an athlete could hurt themselves. But again, our athletes are going to be getting into awkward positions in sport. So doing something a little fun without too much pressure outside of that is also a good idea as well. So I'll just see if I can knock one out real quick. Now the trick is, can you do them both ways? Because lots of people will go that right hand leading, but can they do them both ways? Huh? Not too bad, huh? All right, let's go check out some hamstring variations. Okay, so again, thinking about the fact that the posterior chain is one of the hardest places to develop in the body with just at home minimal or zero equipment. One thing to keep in mind is your couch. So what's something that plagues athletes is weak hamstrings, hamstring tears. You do strength testing, and a lot of athletes are just super quad dominant, and hamstrings are just kind of way behind. So look to your couch to see if maybe you've got a good spot. If you don't have a family member or a friend to hold your ankles while you're doing some Nordic leg curls, here's what I would suggest. Just pull that cushion down there. Me personally, I know that I need some extra weight on here because I'm a little bit too heavy for this setup. So I just throw a little bit of furniture on there. And now I've got myself a pretty sweet hamstring setup. Oh, I'm going to move my camera just a little bit there. All right. So 3 variations or progressions would be a Nordic lean. So just leaning, getting some tension in there. And what I see a lot of times is people collapse in there. So I challenge you, get that torso straight. So that's a Nordic lean. Challenging, you feel the muscles firing. You're activating them eccentrically and concentrically. Then the Nordic razor would be the next progression. On that one, I would sit down. I would see how far forward I can get. And I tend to get a little bit further than I could with the lean, because the lean, you go into it slow, you're activated the whole time, and you really feel the tension build up. Whereas with the razor, you kind of just jump out there, get some tension, and then you're back out of there. And the last one would be the full range of motion, Nordic leg curl. So keep that tension on the way down, keep that tension on the way down. Little push-up. What you don't want to do on that push-up is you don't want to just blast your push-up and get zero work out of the way up. So work on the way down, work on the way down, wait as long as you can, and a little baby push up, and get some work on the way back up as well. So those are just a few of the demonstration, or a few of the options that we've done today. We didn't even do any crawl patterns, which is where so much good stuff can happen for the body, for the core, for mobility, actually for your brain, the cross body movements, and returning to movements that we do when we're infants. There's a bunch of evidence that shows that it's great for us. So we've just barely skimmed the surface on this, but hopefully you've got you guys thinking about ways to have a little bit more fun with your training and to basically have no excuses, even if you're in the middle of COVID and you've got no equipment at home. Awesome. See you next time.